Hi friends, this is Yoga Light. Today we are exploring the inner being as part of an overview of yoga's physical practices. We will look at the Adi Shakti and the soul. The inner being is a discovery. We open to it via an exceptional experience or a gradual awakening to a greater part of our existence that goes beyond the surface ego and senses or habitual conditioning. We realize that we are more than we appear. This may be the result of yoga practice, or the yoga practice may bring us to it. A complete yoga practice includes meditation and systematic breathing. We separate out the levels of our being, our physical experience, our energies, emotions, thoughts, and intuitions. We discover the silent witness, remove the interference of our subconscious, and discover a wider awareness that is part of the subliminal consciousness. Sometimes we glimpse this through the subtle senses and foreknowledge. Sometimes we have more direct experiences. We discover the power of our mind and see the dreamlike nature of the world around us. These two, the subliminal awareness and the imaginary or illusory nature of our lives, change our perspective. We have two possible paths. One is that we allow the ego to seize the direction and make our subtle senses and formative powers serve its story, and the other is that we take a spiritual turn and seek something more, the truth. The truth may be an impersonal one as we look to it for transformation, find a place for an eternal, peaceful infinite, or find a personal one with the Supreme actively becoming and directing and supporting the world in a perfect embrace. We have to overcome the contradictions of the world as it appears, in its imperfection, frustration, and suffering, with touches of happiness, love, and peaceful moments, with a higher vision that spans worlds and ranges of existence. In physical practice, one usually starts with basics that relax the body and calm the mind, so that the silent witness arises and begins to observe and direct the inner flow. The inner flow is whatever is happening. Over time, the silent witness not only observes, but directs. It can allow us useful things, such as focusing on feeling through the activity of the alignments. It can reject other things, such as being distracted by memory associations, reactions to our environment, or habitual thoughts. It can allow us to concentrate or to open up into receptivity. We then become aware and differentiate the layers of being. We become aware of the body, emotional drama, thoughts, and how these interact, with some thoughts causing tension or leading to negative emotions, or how the body, when relaxed, opens one to new awareness and different thoughts and feelings. We learn to separate our reason from our physical and emotional state and to obtain equality in our perceptions. Depending on one's personal capacity and the type of training, we can also become aware of subtle energy and understand how to direct it to develop further. For instance, focusing on the third eye for intuition, or feeling the energy at the heart to develop personal qualities such as sincerity. When we've established this awareness of our subtle energies and the interactions of the parts of our being, we can use the energy from above the head to further open us. As with the slow, gradual development of the Kundalini, the Adi Shakti, or higher consciousness, can transform the being. This involves receptivity, being able to open ourselves to the flow of energy. The energy can be experienced in different ways: light, vibration, a liquid flow. It can be unseen and unfelt with only a sense of it operating. It can descend in a form such as peace or blissfulness, or even an atmosphere around us as if silence descends from above. Over time, with practice, we can become more aware of the connection and see its work, which can even be directed towards working on parts of our being, illness, or situations. As we call down and recognize these higher ranges of consciousness, where all is light and harmony and truth, without the shadow of ignorance, and with the full power and knowledge and connection to the Supreme, down into our being, we surrender to allow it to transform and make changes, to open, widen, remove error, obscurity, and impotence, undo the negative, ignorant influences, and replace these with right action and interaction in the world. Initially, there are three main blocks: doubt or misrecognition of the energies. We aren't sure we are feeling it, or we tap into something and let our emotions rise, like listening to get up and dance music, and mistake this emotional excitement for the force. If you are used to feeling a certain type of energy, you may also confuse the experience. The second block is concentration or remembrance. We may start to get a flow of energy, but not be consistent with the practice. Some postures can be helpful, and some mudras facilitate the opening, but the essential part is to remember to be open and call or receive the energy and give time and persistence to the practice. It can develop in you the knowledge of how to do more and increase your capacity. Eventually, no special technique is needed. One can draw it down in action. The physical practice of yoga allows space and time to do this focus. A third main block is that we reduce the workings of higher consciousness to our narrow ego aims. For instance, we may learn to call down the energy, but limit it to healing or healing metaphors rather than surrendering to the transformation. Over time, we can direct the energy, which is done from the same perspective as the practice, but it can be misdirected towards the ego's agenda. We can focus and aim to shift our identification to the higher consciousness, for instance, by maintaining focus above the head. Or we can call, aspire, use a receptivity and sincerity to invite the higher consciousness down and allow it, through a process of surrender and openness, to enter. This Shakti, or force, or Devi in the personal realm, can be felt as a flow of energy from above, and one can interact with directing it towards problems, or one can allow it free rein to take up and work on the system. High above, we can find a will behind it. We can expand our awareness, call down the higher consciousness, and observe how it interacts with the mind-body system. As above, so below. When the soul comes into rebirth, there are three aspects. One is the world conditions into which one is born. The other is karma, the momentum that comes from past lives. And the third is the spiritual lessons one seeks to work out, the soul's agenda. The part of the soul entering into nature evolves over lifetimes. It gains more power to select and determine the conditions of its rebirth, and seeks to work out more of its evolution in favorable conditions for growth and progress. It utilizes the development from past lives. These can be things that need to be worked on further, such as failures, or it can be supporting developments. When you complete the 5th grade, you don't go directly to college, you go to 6th grade. It is a graduated movement built on what came before. Some lines of progress may be temporarily abandoned so that others can be taken up, and then we return to them later or from a different angle of possibility. The soul's development is also within each kosha. The koshas are part of the human template made from the principles that form interwoven layers, worlds, and subtle materials. These interact with subtle worlds through the subliminal. Nature works out the form you inhabit, but each layer has an individual development within that form. One must master the physical and other koshas to reach one's potential. It works out the emotional, physical, and intellectual development over lifetimes. Eventually you become spiritually aware of the process, and you make a divine connection within, and can consciously participate. If you were a great athlete in one life, this powerful momentum could return to be used to work out the lessons of success as a famous athlete. The world conditions are also a player, as you can incarnate and have your soul's progress thwarted by a natural disaster. One may have to die and return to try again because one hasn't developed enough control in relation to the world conditions, or one may have chosen that experience because it was needed, or one may have the grace intervene and prevent one from reaching the location and being there when it happened. All of these are possible. But the thousands killed in a tsunami are not being punished because they were naughty in a past life, or because they ran out of money to pay the piper of the karmic scorecard. This control of the flow of progress, the cooperation with the soul's and the world's agenda, is part of yoga. As one goes deeper into the inner being, the soul form of nature within can have more influence. The soul allows us to exist as living beings in the world. It is the part that continues between lifetimes. It assimilates experiences and directs the development. There is a transcendent aspect as well as a universal aspect as the oneness. There is an individual side that supports all the koshas. The soul is eternal and unchanging, but there is part that develops in nature, has access to all the potential of being, and works out the becoming. The other aspects of form, material, emotional, and mental, will fall away at death. This part continues and keeps the development that it has worked out and charts the course of future progress. The soul is the divinity of our being and abides in the truth of existence and our nature. It is aware of all beauty and movement towards the divine, of which it knows itself to be. As we evolve and become more in touch with more of our potential, we can connect with this innermost part of the being that uses our manifestation for its development. We are it. As the soul in nature develops over lifetimes, directing the form, it is aware of all that is going on within the instruments, our body, dramas, and thoughts. It knows the truth about our contacts with the world and our reactions. However, it has to communicate through the subliminal consciousness to the surface awareness. These communications enter the subliminal, and they may make their way to the surface, but they are cloaked in the forms of the surface. We normally don't identify with the soul, we identify with the ego. So you get the idea about something and assume that it is your own natural thought process, while the ego distorts it. You aren't aware and don't reflect on the source. Your feelings take a different turn towards someone, and all you know is the drama of the situation. You don't see the real cause while in the story. When the soul does arise and take charge of the being, or achieve a development goal, a realization in its graduated path, this can form past life memories, impressions of the movement of the surface. Some may only have one or two of these moments in their lifetime. The soul is unaffected by failure. Nothing you do or that happens to you will harm it, but it is not guaranteed to direct the being successfully. It has to work as one power among many competing ones. As you develop, you can begin to make contact with the soul movements. A deep, peaceful sincerity and careful listening can find a still voice without pressure that simply is. At first, we are shaped by our conditions. We develop through the natural process of our form, and we are largely identified with our ego. Beneath our senses, mind, and intellect, we have a subconscious containing our memories and habits, the patterns we have internalized from our life, our families, and education. This initial direction is set by the soul seeking favorable conditions for working out its progress. It has to make do with the conditions available in the world. Even the parent's aspiration at conception can play a role. Due to our development, our yogic practice, or grace, we become aware that we are more than we appear. Aware of the illusion, we can use our mental power to control ourselves and turn inward. The soul may have more influence, or we call down the higher consciousness. For some, it is a profound experience that causes inner turnings. For others, it is just a slow awakening, and some are just naturally awake. There are flows and symbols that connect to a much wider working, and we don't have the full frame of reference. The Lord works in mysterious ways. The key is recognition. From this initial understanding, we enter into a dreamlike state where things are both practical and take on a deeper meaning as we move from the surface into the subliminal consciousness. Like the story of the handlebars, things have symbolic meaning, and we see the contents of our minds thrown back at us. We see that what enters the stream of awareness is not just some thought machine in the mind, not just some part of our brain that writes, directs, and produces the dramas of our imagination. We can sense some movements pass through us, and just as we use our minds to shape events, other forces can enter us. These exist all around us through the many layers of the subtle being. Just as we react to the events around us that are beyond our control, we also sense that some things are orchestrated, some for our benefit, including negative ones that we have to overcome. The soul can be touched as an inner experience of light and an impersonal aspect deep within and behind the heart. It can also be seen in action, and what arises is a soul personality. It does not pressure one. There is no sense of urgency like there is with desire. There is a feeling of sincerity, courage, sweetness, and equality in all things. There are peaceful aspects, a love that knows no object, friendly to all, sweet and capable. If we look at an animal, it has a soul. Its ability to influence its vehicle is very tiny. It has little ability to understand and shape the forces around us. but that soul recognizes the divine light. When my teacher came to visit, my cat did something extraordinary. She ran towards the teacher, leaped up onto the dining room table, and slid right in front of her. She had never been on the table before or since. She was drawn to the light. If you look at a living being, there is always a miraculous aspect. If you can go deep enough, you can connect and feel that miracle. It is said that as we do yogic practice and release the tension and develop, that our true purpose arises. I was always struck by someone who said, "Dumb birds." He was driving and the birds waited until the last second to get out of the way. What I didn't say was that birds experience time differently than we do, which I find amazing. They see the car approaching them very slowly. I would rather experience amazement than stupidity. You can observe that people behave differently when under pressure or when they are on medications or alcohol. You want to learn to listen to the quiet voice within and allow that voice to influence you. Be under the soul's influence. You are also being acted upon by other formations from other people and powers. We exist in the spirit of the age and the historical period. At play is a complex flow of competing forces, some in harmony, some in conflict. These are the universal forces, the global currents, and the whole is secretly behind the scenes moving towards its goal. Part of that force is the higher consciousness from above and the various agents, gods, at play in the mix. You can approach these personally or impersonally. You can tune into lights and forces, knowledge. You can also see it personally as a relationship with the divine, as love and inspiration, devotion and gratitude. You also have a spark of the divine aiding you in this, as this is the soul, and the formations you exist in were brought about for your benefit. The physical practices of yoga are a method for the soul and higher consciousness. They are a field of human endeavor using your physical form and actions to connect to the source. This ability to know possibilities beyond the senses and the ability to make willed forms with your mind that work to create and arrange connections and influence the flow of events should serve the soul. You're making the physical an instrument of the spirit, which influences the other koshas. In addition to using knowledge of subtle anatomy, for example focusing on the third eye to awaken intuition and allow the energy system to develop, one can use the practice to expand. One can keep the witness state. For instance, when teaching the physical flows of yoga at the studio, a woman suffering from mental illness came in. We allowed people to try a free class. The woman who came couldn't concentrate and confused us with other studios she had called. She said that she had done a lot of yoga before. During the class, she couldn't focus on the instruction and would squirm and look around trying to figure out what was going on. Fortunately for me, another teacher in the class placed a mat next to her, gave her additional instruction, and was able to engage with her. This was a class of regulars, and in our tradition the class is a meditative environment. This is partly achieved by my staying in that meditative state. The woman was disturbing, but I observed a strong, substantial energy descending on the space and holding the quietness. No one noticed her but me and the helper. It was a palpable force keeping the energy sealed in and supporting the practice. The other students were being embraced. We are capable of many things, but our normal sense of self and subconscious cover this potential. There is often the overlooked aspect of the occult experience of going out of body during an activity such as having a conversation. The conversation continues even as the person is traveling and still aware of the conversation. Who is talking? One can even leave one's body and experience other places while driving and the car doesn't wreck. But you're not sleepwalking, you're still aware and intentional. This recognition changes your relation to your sense of self. You can reverse this and allow the higher forces to take up the body movements to surrender to the flow. On one occasion I was in deep silence holding a pose when I felt something and turned to see a woman out of alignment. I saw an energy form leave my body and dissolve into her personal space, and she corrected her alignment at the same time the verbal cues to correct it entered my mind. When viewed in this way, it is part of something larger and expressed through individual people, but it is not their own actions. It is easy to think in terms of the people involved. You can describe this as an open channel, and these energies come through. The soul or the higher wisdom recognizes the quality and knows the truth of these energies, and they have the knowledge and power to act and transform. In physical practice, we can become quiet and aware. The teachings in all different traditions are part of a higher energy coming through globally. For instance, you can practice expanding your awareness out into the vastness. Just as you can hear sounds outside your building, your subtle and energetic awareness can be expanded. Your body-mind system is a tiny part of your greater existence. Try moving slowly in sun salutation, keeping the focus on this expanded awareness and inner harmony. Your awareness is not limited to your surface impressions. The experience of your sense mind tells you that it is. We can also look at illness and the physical karma. The physical practice allows us to connect, not only through the various layers, thoughts, emotions, and our energy to the physical illness, but we can see the symbolic aspects, the psychogenic components, and we can tap into the deeper resources at our disposal to understand and influence the course of an illness or recover from an injury. Some people are gifted in their ability to see causes. Others have abilities to aid your healing. The higher forces can come through directly working on the body or through events such as getting the right person in the emergency room. Remember that the physical is also a cause like a tsunami. For instance, you may find wrong views or personal traumas that relate to cancer, but firefighters have a 14% greater risk of dying from cancer due to exposure to carcinogens. I have known several people who are alive because the right person arrived just after their accident. For example, a friend who had a broken neck was treated by an emergency trauma nurse who happened to be in the car directly behind him and saw the accident happen. Some people are tuned into certain types of events, such as big monetary deals or traumatic accidents. When one starts to observe this, it can be applied to oneself. Though there are subtle energies at play, if we focus our minds only on health or fitness, or are constantly being berated about alignment during practice, we will likely stay only on the surface. Physical yoga practice and teaching can be fields where we become aware of much more. Doing the practice with an aspiration to be open and receptive, keeping the witness in front, can reveal much. We seek deep within to reveal our true self. We can call down the higher consciousness and feel the energy entering and taking up our transformation. One is opening oneself to the divine within or above. Aspiring during inverted backward bends, one's lifting the heart to the sky, such as wheel and camel, while focusing on higher feelings or a higher truth, can be quite revealing. In the next video, we will look at the use of physical body and surrender. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Until next time.